Yeah, well, I guess it only enforced it when I joined Yes, that I joined other people who enjoyed arranging and considered it was part of what you did. Somebody wrote a song, but then you kind of did things to it to make it the group song. And I guess that was happening in Tomorrow, and it was happening, in most of my career, that there was a sense of it. Maybe you learn a bit from producers who, in my early experience, producer would say, like, well, I'm going to go out when I come back. Work out how you're going to play this song. So it usually fell on the group to do that. Of course, producers can help, like Bruce Fairbairn. He came in and helped, yes, arranging ideas as we were rehearsing The Ladder. So you get a really good input, and then you can even more see what's going on and how the decisions are made. It's a vast topic, actually. I mean, as you say, writing comes out of this sort of well inside people, and they write things, and great. But to arrange it, to make it a cohesive piece of music is a sort of skill that you learn, I think, over years. I don't think you can learn this at music school so much, because every time you meet new music, you have to make decisions about it, and nobody can really prepare that for you. But that's partly what it is. I think there's a sort of guideline you could follow. I'm not sure I could, come up with that guideline in all intents, but I guess it would be along the lines of, the importance of intros and outros was really big with me. I love a great intro, lots of guitar intros that I've done. They've come out of an arrangement idea where I've got something later maybe, or it's going to be a part of music we're going to play later. There's games you can play, if you like, and you could try and avoid the verse, chorus, verse, chorus, middle eight verse. You can play around with those pop rock scenarios. They can disguise, in fact, a lot of other music. And when Yes wrote Yours Is No Disgrace, I think that was one of the first really long intros we had. We had a start-up intro, we had a thematic intro, we had all this stuff. And I think that's really, you can see it easiest in classical music, because you're not even really sure what the tune is, but there's a lot going on. And I think I'm currently working with one or two arrangers, actually, and I like that in my work, that I actually work with somebody. Sometimes I can give my music to somebody, like Andrew Jackman before he passed away, and I can kind of throw it at him, and he can come back. When you write your own music, it's actually quite hard. So when you collaborate with other people, that's the time when the arrangements can come at the bass player and say, oh, I like playing this, this pedal behind that. You go, oh, that's a good idea. So you've got to, it's all about people skills. Arranging is hearing what somebody does and being able to compliment them and say, well, look, can we just do that for 8 bars instead of 64? And it's the boldness to be able to shape music. I think it's really, and if you think like that, it isn't really a puzzling musical dilemma. It's just an approach. It's just something you do. I read that Kenny Burrell said in the 20th Century Guitar magazine last month about, because the guy said to him, the interviewer said, how did you keep that sound you always had, and he was always interested in the production. He was always guiding his, because when you're a guitarist, you not only got to guide your sound, but also you've got to guide your arrangements, because otherwise you won't get any opportunities, or maybe you get enough, but allow other people to have, certainly in Yes, we were always trying to feature different people at different times. So that's what an arrangement is, really. It's not allowing the singer to start the song, sing all the way through, and then end it. Oh, thank you, that was fun. Can I play something?
And it takes a lot of energy sometimes to actually push through some ideas, because sometimes the singer just wants to start with the vocal.
Well, you might do. You're right about how much strength you need, because that's what I said about people skills. It's almost learning about yourself. You've got to learn how to turn it round, turn it back. Somebody says, oh, I don't like that, and you feel hurt, but you shouldn't, because he doesn't mean, I don't like any of your music. All he's saying is, I don't like those 4 bars. And if you can rub with that, if you can work with that, you're going to make good arrangements, and it's teamwork. But eventually, of course, like I do, I sit here and I'm arranging guitar. I get a tune and I like the tune. Oh, I love this tune. I play it to bits. And then I'm like, what the hell am I going to, where's it going to fit? That's really actually more difficult than writing a tune. So how to compose, like, for instance, a guitar solo guitar piece, that's particularly exciting, but it's particularly, taxing, because, it's only you and this guitar and 6 strings. You've got to make that an arrangement. It can't just be like a tune, then another tune, then another tune, good night. There has to be some sort of growth, and I think that's what arrangement is sort of like growth.
Yeah, I think what's great about the homebrew CDs where you have your you release your demos and with some notes and stuff. And I thought one thing that really caught me, which I thought was great, was the Between Your Smiles tune that ended up being on the Anderson Bruford Wakeman Howe record.
Yeah.
And how what a kind of contained singer-songwriter type of song it was, coming from a guitar player that's known for a lot of guitar playing, and maybe some people kind of would assume that you would actually be in the band or be in the room and then offer up all this kind of music or these riffs and then let the singer do his bit, but you're actually really a songwriter in a sense as well. And I thought that the really interesting thing about those records is that you do get some insight into just how dramatically tunes can change.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that. And also, thanks for raising that point, that's a good example of arrangement, because, I might sit in my studio and, have fun, play stuff, and then I might even think, let's see it, good night, let's see it. But compared to somebody else, they'll have a different take on it.
Yeah.
And that's what can grow. Certainly if you collaborate, put one of their songs with one of yours. But, that's something that I think that's why I bothered to start Homebrew in the first place, because I did like some of those early arrangements where I hadn't thought about it for long. I just written it, and I just thought, well, this is the only way I can really put it down, And that they did bring me some pleasure, and I guess it wasn't my ego to say, oh, this is how I originally wrote it. It was really just to say, well, this is another take on it, and it's another mood. And,
well, we were talking about me and some musician friends on the weekend were talking about a Canadian guitar player who released another record, and the guy that I know had worked with the Canadian guys, and he says the demo's way better than their record, and of course they went down to Nashville to make it with some other guys. And, so you hear that a lot of how sometimes, the demo may not necessarily be as polished, but sometimes there's usually some spark there that's kind of interesting.
I'll throw this in there. I mean, when I played with Queen on their record in Orlando, and when I was there, they kind of explained to me that all their records were the demos. They did a demo, and then they went, well, that's pretty, let's change it there. Oh, let's put that in there. And then they just kept working on it until it was finished. And I guess I could have done that with my Homebrew tracks. I could have said, well, that was plan A, but now how do I make this more presentable? And I guess in a way I did that with albums I started doing it with the Grand Scheme of Things, where a lot of tracks actually were the originals. That's where I can't look back so often with Homebrew on certain albums where I've actually used the demo as my master. And happily, really excitedly, that in a way there was something there, and I didn't need to change it a lot. Guys that go off, to Nashville, make the record, there's the demo, and they lose so much of that personality. And the bands notice that, like you say, and I've noticed it with quite a few records I've made, where, in fact, the way we even had it sounding in the studio before it was mixed was a hell of a lot better than the way it came out.
Right, yeah.
It was sitting, and the guitar was fighting the keyboards, and the vocals were fighting the harmonies, and everything was sort of fighting. But once you get it steriled up, and everything's, oh yeah, that's nice, oh yeah, nothing happens.
Well, it's amazing how,
happening.
Yeah, you can have a great part, but if you can't hear it, then it's kind of wasted, and you can't even,
well, yeah,
but
there. That's always a loss for me. I always wanted to remix, like Union or ABWH, just because the guitar just, without me being there, it just isn't right, and it never usually is.
Yeah, because you're the guy who knows.
I've got to put my pennyworth in, like Kenny Burrell did.
Yeah.
I've got to put my pennyworth in to say, hang on, that guitar is not warm enough, or it's too dull, or it's got no perspective, or there's so many things you might say, as well as, can you turn it up a bit?
Oh, yeah.
Can I actually hear it? So don't go there, because that's a vast topic of my discontent. That's to be expected with the amount of records I've made. I like the process of doing it whether you don't have any expectations about quality. You
right.
Put it on the voice. You're just standing like I am here. So I think, oh, hang on, that's a good idea. Plunk it down instead of going in a studio and starting to record it. It's a bit premature. I like a good wine. I like to lay the music down and go, oh, that's pretty good. Now, every now and again, I will jump right back to the last thing I did, I'll go, hang on, I'm looking for something for some songwriting I'm doing with somebody else. I just did this last week. And I wanted to add something, and instead of looking back in my sort of file, I thought, last week I was doing something, it might just work with this. And it did, So, in a way, it's good to have a top shelf and a bottom shelf, where
right.
you can draw out. I mean, I'm really lucky that my songwriting, and funny enough, this was what I wanted to do as much as I did play the guitar, funny enough.
Well, that's probably a secret to maybe your success too, though, eh?
Well, when I started, my only reference point, first was guitarist, but then I met Keith West and we formed a group. I think then, when Keith had songs and he'd play me Why Like Buzzard thing, it convinced me that I should write songs. I had been writing them before that, but once I'd met Keith, I knew the means where you could get your songs into the group. It was all like on this weird cassette no, it wasn't actually cassettes, it was reel-to-reel tapes, Telefunken tape machine. And of course it was very difficult to record on them, but, you couldn't overdub, you could just play something. And that's what I called songwriting. And
yeah.
You see, that's what's great about my 175. People ask me, why is that? What's so great about the guitar? I said, well, what's great about it is that I liked playing it so much, I played the hell out of it.
It seemed to sound better with time.
I think time, performance, and I think something really that we really don't understand about our personalities and about our sound, because, we all do make a different sound. And I think when you get used to guitar, like I say, when I gently play my 018, I can't help but think, that's great. That sounds great. Because in a way, my head, my ears, believe it's great. You know what I mean? And, I think that, I think this side of it, the playing, your fingers, knowing the guitar, I think there's some very strange intrinsic things that we really don't understand, which I'm quite happy about. Is that there is something else going on, and we don't know what it is, and perhaps it's for good reason. What your life consists of is important for your music, and you've got to kind of like it. If meditation helps you like your life, whatever it is, whatever your station, it may well do that. But also, you've got to have some interest, and you've got to have some perspective on whether your music's a kind of voice, an inner voice. You don't know what it's saying, but it's saying something about you. And if that's all bottled up and not coming out, then find a way of doing that.